Welcome students. In this video, we're going to set up our CAD file to plasma cut out some house numbers. Now, I'm going to show you how to do house numbers. If you'd like to put some text in here instead and make it into a sign with your name or somebody else's name, that's fine. You'll notice our examples here are vertical. If you'd like to make yours go horizontal, that's fine as well. This video is going to do the negative space cutouts. We're going to cut out the numbers. We're going to leave a background on here. If you're looking to get something like the bottom example on our house number sign sheet, you're going to want to go check out the other YouTube video linked in our classroom page. So again, we're going to do the number cutout, creating some negative space. One of the pros is it's pretty quick because we don't have to set up a border. We can just start typing when we get into AutoCAD. But we will have to come back if you've got numbers like 9 or letters like B or O. We got to put some supports on, like you can see here, so the center of those numbers don't fall out. Right, so I've already got AutoCAD open. I already went in Files, saved. So I've got my file path set up. I called it house numbers and saved it in my Google Drive. And we're going to start this off by making a rectangle. Right, now I'm going to do mine, like I said, vertically. You could do yours horizontally. You would just flip-flop these two numbers. And I'm going to go 5 3/4, so 5.75 by 15.75. And so those two numbers that I just typed in, we can do that one more time if I went too fast. Those two numbers that I typed in are each 1/4 inch less than 6 and 1/4 inch less than 16 inches. And the reason we're doing that is so we can maximize the amount of these we can cut out of a 48 by 48 inch sheet of material, which is the biggest piece of material we can put onto our plasma cutter. And so now that I got that rectangle there, I'll try zooming in a little bit. And we'll move it to the center of my screen. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit this text button. This is going to be a new one for us. I'm going to just click and put a box on here. And this is where I'm going to put my text. Right. So I'm going to type in the text I want first, then I'm going to highlight it. And the first thing I like to do is make it bigger. Okay, now house number signs are typically 3 to 4 inches. So I'm going to tell it to make mine 3.5 inches tall. And then I'm going to come over here. I'll try that again. We're going to go 3.5. There, they're bigger. Now I'm going to come over here and change my font so you can see what's happening with that big numbers on my screen. As I scroll through these different fonts here, it'll give me a little preview of what my font is going to look like. Right? Sometimes you got to wait a second for it to update. Sometimes it's like all these artifacts are fairly similar. So as you're scrolling through, you may or may not notice a difference between them. So you're just going to go through this list here until you find something that you like. Trying to find the one I used before. All right, I think it was this one, this Berlin Sands. I kind of like the way this looks. So I'm going to go enter. Oh, it changed it up on me. It gave me a different one. All right, so we're going to go with that. That's the one I'm sticking with. Right now, our text is actually text right now. It's not line files. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to select my text. Then I'm going to come down to the command section here, and I'm going to go txt-exp, right? And that's the text explode command. And so when you click on that txt-exp, you'll notice your text goes from being a solid color to one that's got a colored outline, and it may show up with some lines on the inside. We're going to take care of those in just a second. All right, so I'm going to highlight this again, and then I'm going to come down here, and the next command I'm going to do is overkill. So I'm going to type the word overkill in. This menu is going to pop up. What overkill is doing is it's looking for any small lines that are within a certain distance of each other. So that's our tolerance here. So it's going to look for lines that are closer than 2/100ths of an inch to each other. If there's any parallel lines or any lines that are running within 2/100ths of an inch of each other, this is going to overkill and delete one of them. All right, so I'm going to click OK. And down here it gives me a little report. It says 0 duplicates deleted, so there was none found. And now I'm going to take the trim tool and I'm going to come in and trim away some of this material inside of my numbers. Right now, I'm going to try and be efficient. I'm going to copy this 9 and use it twice. I'm not actually going to use this other 9. So we're going to go ahead and just get rid of this one. All right. So if you got duplicate numbers, you could do the same thing. All right. Now I noticed on the 1, when I overkilled, it opened this entire spot up here. So I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just going to draw a line segment going from one endpoint to another. Now that line segment is white. These numbers are green. Oops, get rid of that. But I've only got my 0 layer that I'm drawing on right now. All right, so they are all on the same layer. It's just making my lines a different color than my number. We're going to take care of some layers and color stuff later on here. So I'm going to go ahead and select all my numbers. I exploded them. I overkilled them. Now I want to join them back together. So each of these numbers is just one line segment. So we're going to type the word join in the bottom. And that should put our numbers together. Now, if I come over here and I hover, you can see the 1 all highlights, right? That's good. That tells me that 1 is one complete line segment. Right? Same thing when I hover on the outside of the 9, it highlights, the inside highlights, right? And the 7 highlights. Right? Sometimes when you go to join stuff together, it'll still have multiple segments, so we might have to go back and overkill, or we might have to zoom in where those 2 segments are to see if the lines are crossing and do a little bit of editing. I guess you could say that we got lucky here with this one. So if you're having trouble getting your stuff to join back together after a few tries, ask your instructor, ask your classmates. They might be able to help you out with that. So now I'm going to move these numbers around on my sign. So I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, remember this rectangle on the back kind of represents our background. Okay, so I'm going to take and I'm going to highlight the entire 9. And then I'm going to go up top here to move. And when I want to move an object, it makes me pick a base point. So I'm just going to click somewhere on this 9, and then I'm able to drag it around. All right, so I'm going to do the same to the 7. I use the space bar to tell it I wanted to move it. All right. Now I'm going to take the 9 and I'm going to highlight it. Actually, I don't want to copy it just yet, do I? Well, we'll try moving the 1 into place. I'm trying to kind of pick the center point of the geometry for these numbers and then move my other numbers so they line up. And I think they're looking pretty centered on each other. Right? So you can eyeball it. There are some ways that you can get more precise. Again, if you want me to come explain that to you personally, I would be happy to. I don't want to get too involved here in this video. And so I've got my numbers lining up, and I said I didn't want to copy my 9 just yet because I got to put a little bit of support in here. So I'm going to zoom in on my 9, and I got to decide now where I want to put the support that's going to keep that midpoint from dropping out. And I also need to decide, do I want to use a line or an arc? Okay, since this one's kind of curvy, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use an arc. So I'm going to just kind of pick 2 points, and I'll take and stretch out my arc. Again, that looks gigantic. So I can come in with the trim button and I can trim some stuff away. We don't need this line down here. So I think that's going to look okay. Now what I'm going to do is use the offset, and I'm going to specify a distance down here. We want to have our supports at least a 1/4 inch thick. We could go up to a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go 0.5 for a 1/2 inch. And so then I'm going to pick this one, and I'll slide my arc over here. Okay, so these 2 lines are offset a 1/2 inch, but obviously this one's not providing me with the support that I want. So I'm going to come to the extend button next, and I'll extend that down. And then we're going to switch back to trim mode here. We're going to get rid of this section. We're going to get rid of all of this stuff in between. And we'll do the same. And down here at the bottom, all right, sometimes it helps to zoom in on this stuff. Sometimes we get lucky from where we are. Okay, so there's what my 9 is going to look like now. I think people are going to recognize that as the number 9. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to go back to my selection tool. I'm just going to highlight the whole thing. I got to join it together one more time. And it tells me it joins 65 segments into one polyline. And if I highlight it, it all looks good. And so now I need to move and copy this number 9 here. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to pick the copy button. And it says specify base point or displacement mode. So again, I'm going to try and pick the point down here. This looks like it's center point, so we'll choose that as our base point. And I'm going to drag another 9 down to the bottom. And I'll hit enter. And now I've got my second 9 in there. And these all look like they're kind of closer to the bottom than they are to the top. So I'm going to highlight everything and go into move one more time. And I'm just going to move these up a little bit. Right? So you're welcome to play around with this as much or as little as you want. Get it looking the way you want. And what I would recommend is if you haven't done this during my video, let's go ahead and hit the save button. All right, now we're going to set up our layers. When we cut this thing on the plasma cutter, we need to have continuity for the electrode to run through. Okay, so what that means is we got to start at the center and work our way out. If we were to cut this rectangle first, it would free our piece of metal from that big piece of metal, and we may not have electron flow through the whole thing. So we always want to start at the inside and work our way out when we're doing this. And so we're going to click on layer properties, and we're going to create 2 layers. All right, I'm going to call this first one my first I got to find the rename button. Okay, I'm going to call this my start. And then I'm going to call this one my stop. All right, and then what I'm going to do, because typically when I see green, I know it means start, is I'm going to make my start layer green. And you guessed it, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make my stop layer red. And so I'm going to click OK on there. We'll close our layer properties. And I'm going to highlight this whole thing. I'm going to go to my drop down and I'm going to put the whole thing on my start. Right, now you can see some are bright green, some are light green. So we're going to one more time here. Make sure you're on your start layer. And then all of these should be by layer. All right, so we'll make sure that's on our start layer. All right, so I'm going to do this by layer. All right, let's see if we can select it all and make that happen. Yep. So we'll just change this color by layer. We can do line weight by layer as well. All right, there, it's all bright green. So this is saying it's going to do all of this at the beginning, and we just talked about how we need to start and stop. So now I'm going to pick the outside, and I'm going to bring it to my red layer, and then I'll click escape. Free me from that selection tool, and I can kind of analyze this one more time. I'll make sure it looks like I've got everything on the right layer, everything positioned the way I want. If you like it, let's go ahead and hit save, and in the next video I will show you how to export this file as a DXF. Then you'll be able to bring it over to that plasma cutter.